Hello Army, welcome to Taekook channel.
Army thought they knew everything about Jungkook's trip to Madrid, but then Taehyung revealed a detail nobody saw coming. What happened during Jungkook's very first day in the city left even those closest to him completely surprised. Was it an unexpected encounter? A hidden struggle? Or a moment that changed the entire trip? As Taehyung began sharing the story, fans couldn't stop talking about what he said next. And, trust me, the most shocking part wasn't what happened in Madrid, it was Jungkook's reaction afterward. Stay until the end, because this story gets even more surprising. Madrid was supposed to be just another stop on a busy schedule. The city was alive with energy, the streets crowded with people, and everything seemed to be going exactly as planned. At least, that's what everyone thought. According to Taehyung, Jungkook arrived with his usual confidence and excitement. He wanted to explore, experience the atmosphere, and make the most of every moment. Nothing about that first day suggested that anything unusual was about to happen. But only a few hours after arriving, something completely unexpected caught Jungkook off guard. At first, it seemed like a small moment that most people would have ignored. Yet for Jungkook, it became one of the most memorable experiences of the entire trip. Taehyung explained that the situation unfolded so suddenly that even those around him didn't immediately realize how much it affected him. What made the story even more interesting was Jungkook's reaction. Instead of brushing it off and moving on, he kept talking about it long afterward. The experience stayed on his mind, and according to Taehyung, it revealed a side of Jungkook that fans rarely get to see. As the details slowly emerged, everyone listening became even more curious. What exactly happened during those first few hours in Madrid? And why did Taehyung believe that this single moment said so much about Jungkook's true personality? The answer would leave many fans looking at the story in a completely different way. As the conversation continued, Taehyung revealed that the moment wasn't dramatic in the way people might expect. There were no major accidents, no last-minute changes to the schedule, and nothing that would normally make headlines. Yet somehow, it became one of the stories he remembered most clearly. The reason, he explained, had everything to do with Jungkook himself. From the outside, many people see Jungkook as someone who is always confident, energetic, and ready for any challenge. Years of performing on the world's biggest stages have created an image of someone who rarely appears nervous or uncertain. But Taehyung said that traveling often reveals a different side of a person, especially when they find themselves in an unfamiliar environment. On that first day in Madrid, Jungkook was determined to experience as much of the city as possible. He paid attention to everything around him, the architecture, the atmosphere, the people, and the unique energy that made the city feel different from anywhere else he had visited. While others were focused on schedules and logistics, Jungkook seemed fascinated by even the smallest details. At one point, according to Taehyung, Jungkook became completely absorbed in observing what was happening around him. He was so interested in the sights and sounds of the city that he momentarily forgot about everything else. What happened next was simple, but it caught everyone by surprise. Jungkook suddenly realized he had wandered farther away than he intended. It wasn't a dangerous situation, and there was never any real cause for concern. Still, for a brief moment, he found himself separated from the group while trying to take in the atmosphere of the city. When he finally noticed, his expression reportedly changed instantly. Taehyung laughed while recalling the memory. The same person who could stand confidently in front of tens of thousands of fans suddenly looked completely unsure of what to do next. For a few minutes, Jungkook tried to act calm. He looked around, checked his surroundings, and attempted to figure out the quickest way back. But according to Taehyung, anyone who knew him well could tell that he was becoming increasingly frustrated with himself. What made the situation memorable wasn't the fact that he got separated from the group. It was the way he reacted afterward. Instead of blaming circumstances or making excuses, Jungkook reportedly kept saying that he should have been paying closer attention. Even after everything was resolved, he couldn't stop replaying the situation in his mind. Taehyung said that Jungkook spent far more time thinking about it than anyone else did. That was when Taehyung noticed something interesting. Most people would have laughed it off and forgotten about it within minutes. Jungkook couldn't. Not because he was embarrassed, but because he genuinely cared about doing things right. He felt responsible not only for himself, but also for the people around him. Even a minor inconvenience bothered him if he felt it might have affected someone else. As Taehyung continued telling the story, the people listening began to understand why this seemingly ordinary moment had stayed with him for so long. It wasn't really a story about getting lost. It was a story about character. The experience revealed how seriously Jungkook takes responsibility, even in situations where nobody expects him to. It showed the difference between how the public often sees him and how he sees himself. While fans admire his talent and confidence, those closest to him also see someone who constantly reflects on his actions and looks for ways to improve. Yet the most surprising part of the story was still to come. Later that evening, after everything had settled down and the group was finally relaxing, Taehyung noticed that Jungkook had become unusually quiet. At first, nobody thought much about it. Long travel days can be exhausting, and everyone assumed he was simply tired. But then Jungkook said something that immediately caught everyone's attention. It wasn't about the city. It wasn't about the schedule. And it wasn't about the small incident from earlier in the day. Instead, he shared a thought that completely changed the way Taehyung viewed the entire experience. The room fell silent as Jungkook explained what had really been on his mind all along. And when Taehyung heard those words, he realized that the first day in Madrid had meant much more to Jungkook than anyone had imagined. For a moment, nobody said anything. The room had been filled with casual conversation just seconds earlier, but Jungkook's comment changed the atmosphere completely. Even Taehyung admitted that he hadn't expected those words to come from him. Jungkook looked thoughtful as he spoke, his attention fixed somewhere beyond the room itself, as if he were still replaying the events of the day in his head. He explained that what stayed with him wasn't the fact that he had briefly lost track of the group. It wasn't even the confusion he felt in that moment. What stayed with him was how quickly everything around him had changed. One minute he was surrounded by familiar faces, following a routine he knew well. The next, he was standing in the middle of a city thousands of miles from home, surrounded by people he had never met, hearing a language he didn't fully understand, and realizing just how big the world really was. That feeling, he said, was both exciting and humbling. Taehyung listened carefully as Jungkook continued. For years, their lives had moved at an incredible pace. Concerts, recordings, travel, appearances, rehearsals, every day seemed planned down to the smallest detail. Yet in Madrid, for a brief moment, none of that mattered. He was simply another person walking through a city. And strangely enough, he liked that feeling. According to Taehyung, Jungkook admitted that moments like that reminded him why he enjoyed traveling in the first place. They allowed him to step outside the familiar routines of his career and experience life from a different perspective. The more he talked, the more everyone realized that the story wasn't about a mistake or an awkward moment. It was about growth. Jungkook explained that being in a completely unfamiliar place forced him to pay attention in a way he normally didn't. He noticed details he would have overlooked. He observed people more carefully. He appreciated small interactions that might have seemed insignificant before. Even something as simple as walking through a busy street had become meaningful. Taehyung smiled as he remembered that part of the conversation because it sounded exactly like Jungkook. While other people saw a minor inconvenience, Jungkook had turned it into a lesson. But then Taehyung revealed another detail that made the story even more memorable. Later that night, after the discussion had ended and everyone was preparing to rest, Jungkook did something unexpected. Instead of heading straight to his room, he spent time reviewing photos and videos he had taken throughout the day. He looked through every image carefully, stopping on moments that most people would have ignored. A building illuminated by the evening sun. A crowded street filled with laughter. A quiet corner of the city that had caught his attention for only a few seconds. When Taehyung asked why he was spending so much time looking through them, Jungkook gave a simple answer. He didn't want to forget how he felt. Not the confusion. Not the excitement. Not even the uncertainty. He wanted to remember all of it. Because years from now, he knew he wouldn't remember every schedule or every destination. But he would remember the feeling of discovering something new for the first time. That answer stayed with Taehyung. It reminded him that despite everything BTS had achieved, Jungkook still approached new experiences with the curiosity of someone who believed there was always more to learn. And that curiosity was exactly what had transformed an ordinary first day in Madrid into a memory worth telling. However, Taehyung admitted there was one final part of the story he had never shared publicly before. A conversation that happened the next morning. A conversation so unexpected that even now, years later, he could remember every word. And according to Taehyung, that conversation revealed something about Jungkook that most fans had never seen before. It wasn't about fame, success, or music. It was about the future. And what Jungkook quietly confessed that morning left everyone around him completely surprised.